Desert Radio, the bold voice.
In Europe, but now it has members all around the world, in Africa, in Latin America, North America, Southeast Asia, Middle East. So it's all over the world. And what we do specifically is cross-border investigative projects. So, I mean, one of our partners, long-standing projects, is the Namibian.
Yes.
So we've been dealing with Tangeni and Shenovin for quite a long time. I mean, stuff like, the fish rot scandal, for instance,
Yep.
which you guys might, I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware of that. We were involved in that, yeah. So when we were talking about, the outsized wealth, for instance, of Isabella dos Santos, that was OCCRP. When we talk about Panama Papers, when we talk about Pandora Papers, all of those things, that's the kind of projects that OCCRP does. So we've got a growing culture of investigative journalism. And I mean, it's becoming more and more critical for work throughout the world, and especially in Africa, where we sometimes have governments which seem to run away with people's money. Not seem to, they do. I mean, I'm in Joburg. We know in South Africa, of course. So, it's important for us to have this kind of collaborations, because we're seeing that criminals, they get more and more clever. So we also have to be a bit more clever, and we need to collaborate with our colleagues across borders. And the biggest impediment to that is money. So OCCRP has been able to corral some resources, so that we can actually effectively do this. So it's been a bit of a game changer, and it's quite exciting. I mean, this latest project, I don't know, I think you gave a fantastic summary of what it actually involves. I don't know if you want me to go into further detail. I don't want to waste your time there, though.
Yeah, just a little bit as to like what started the investigation, and in terms
Sure.
of what you can share, findings, who was named, things like that.
Sure. Okay. So what I think is important here, it's critical to note that so we had a leak, yeah, which came from the leak involved Credit Suisse, which of course is a massive bank based out of Switzerland. And when you talk about Switzerland, you're talking about secrecy. And they've had numerous scandals over the years. I'm talking about over more than 30 years. They've had scandals involving the bank, not only Credit Suisse, but Swiss banks. And every time they say they're going to do better, they're going to change the laws, they're going to have better checks and balances. But we see that nothing really changes, the system just becomes more and more opaque. And what we found now is that this is the biggest leak that we've seen so far. It involves 18,000 accounts. And I mean, even that is just a small snapshot of the clients that the bank has. And what we found, even with the small snapshot that we have, everything from people involved, the military rulers in North Africa, the spy chiefs. We're talking about, nefarious business people. All these, we're talking about people, for instance, I think one of our better stories is the story out of Zimbabwe. So if you recall the quite violent election that took place between 2008, 2009, where the MDC was seriously challenging the ruling ZANU-PF. And essentially, ZANU was under sanctions. The ZANU government was under sanctions, couldn't get money for the election. They also lacked money for critical supplies like fuel and medicines. And what happens there is you have the bank involved in a deal to actually sell a mine for a proxy of the ZANU government, a guy by the name of Billy Rautenbach. Now, Billy Rautenbach had been flagged before, and he's a South African guy who had fled to Zimbabwe when he already ran into trouble with authorities in South Africa. Fled to Zimbabwe, got engrossed or got embedded in the government over there, and got very close to the likes of, the guy is very close to is the current president, Emerson Mnangagwa. And then is responsible for a whole bunch of big deals between the government and other private entities. So what we're seeing is Billy is the bridge, yeah? So Billy is the guy who makes sure that money keeps coming in, for a cut, of course, But so we're finding that massive movements of money through an account that was opened and closed as quickly. This is now Billy Rautenbach's account. money which we understand was used, yes, in part to pay for much needed fuel and medicines, but also to fund the ZANU campaign. And of course, we know that during that 2008, 2009 campaign, people were severely beaten, maimed, and some were even killed during that election,
Yeah.
which many people say was a rigged election. So that's just one investigation. I mean, I think that this week, the Namibian will also explore some of the Namibian links there, and I don't want to steal their thunder, but they will also show that this touches on most countries on our continent. And what's critical here is the guy who the person who blows the whistle here says the reason that they are blowing this whistle is because this kind of crookery, the people who it affects the worst are people living in developing countries like us, who are then starved of legitimate tax revenue, which is then squirreled away in these secretive accounts, where these guys, by law, actually are mandated to actually do due diligence, and they don't do that. And that is and you know what happens at the end of the day is that when these guys have been caught out before, they say, I'm sorry, can we make a deal? The next thing you know, somebody gets fined and, carry on.
Yeah.
And what regulators are calling for, what politicians are calling for, is that it's time somebody goes to jail for this because they don't seem to learn their lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, look, within this project, there were many names also that were leaked, of course, but some names were also left out. Was there perhaps a strategy to put out certain names and leave out some names? What was the reasoning behind that?
Okay, so critically, your banking information is secret. We don't want to mess with that. We have no reason to, unless there is an overwhelming public interest argument to be made. So there are certain names which we have focused on because they have been convicted of criminal activity, or they have been flagged or came up in media reports for having done something nefarious. And also, we have taken a quite a conservative approach because it's important that when we build our body of evidence, that we, for the largest part, can say, that that the bank and these people who are involved here are likely criminally liable. So we have been very conservative to make sure that we don't have any cracks in our arguments where the bank might try to exploit and say like, yes, but this or that information isn't true. So we went to great lengths with our partners. I mean, we dealt with 49 media partners all over the world. And we wanted to make sure that our we presented was above scrutiny.
100%. Now, just in closing, Namibians are probably wondering and asking themselves, so what? Why should I care about the names and the people that have been revealed through this project? What would you tell them without necessarily giving away too much information? Why should Namibians care about this project?
Look outside your front door. When you look outside your front door and your street isn't swept, your garbage isn't collected, your tap isn't running, the lights aren't on when they're supposed to be, that building that they've been building for the past 10 years that's not being completed, all of these things are, as a result, you can directly link them to money being squirreled away or stolen really from you as a taxpayer, because ultimately you are the person who is paying for that, paying for people to enrich themselves. People, I mean, when we found amounts in excess of 100 billion US dollars. That's more than the GDP of this entire continent. That's being, and a lot of that money is being stolen from the developing world, and a lot of it from Africa. So that is why you should care, because things that should be done, that you paying for, that to improve your life, the lives of everybody around you, including your children and future generations. The reason that is not being done in a timeous manner is because people are stealing, and they need to be held accountable.
100%. Beauregard, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We definitely look forward to reading more about this latest global journalism project, the Suisse Secrets, to see what the information is that you've all gathered for us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. Keep well.
Thanks.